12 years. That's what the evening was about. A dozen years of promises, fights, victories, dinners, silences, mornings half filled with coffee and half lost in regret. 12 years of being Mr. and Mrs. Rowe. And I thought, naively, that tonight would mark a kind of quiet triumph. We had made it. Maybe not flawlessly, but we had endured. That had to count for something. Clarissa had picked Voluto. Said she wanted elegance. Said she wanted to make this anniversary memorable. The restaurant sat like a jewel above the city, windows curved to show the skyline in cinematic panorama, the chandeliers above us glittering like glass constellations. She loved places like this, loved being seen in them more. And she wore red, of course. Always red. Her statement color. The same shade she wore the night we met. But tonight, it didn't feel like a callback. It felt like a warning flare. She laughed too easily. Toasted too early. She leaned in too close to my ear when she clinked her glass and said, "To 12 golden years, my love." But her eyes, they didn't match her voice. They didn't match the heat of her wine or the warmth of her hand resting on mine. They were somewhere else. Cold. Calculating. I pushed the thought aside, as one learns to do in marriage. You edit your own instincts. You tell yourself not to overthink, not to ruin a good moment. We were surrounded by family, my sister Marlene, her cousin Jared, our mutual friends from college. Everyone smiling, eating, laughing in the golden glow of money well spent and love well rehearsed. I wore the navy blue suit Clarissa bought me last Christmas. It fit too well now. I had lost weight without realizing it. Stress has a way of doing that quietly, like an eraser taking away bits of you. Clarissa was radiant in red. Her lipstick matched the wine in her glass. Her fingers danced when she talked, commanding attention the way a conductor pulls music from an orchestra. Everyone looked at her. Everyone always did. I used to admire that. Tonight, it felt like I was watching a performance I'd been excluded from. I stood up midway through the entrees, murmured something about the restroom. She barely acknowledged it, just offered a casual nod and turned back to Jared, who was telling a story too animated for my taste. Clarissa laughed too loud. That laugh. It had a jagged edge tonight, like a spoon clinking the wrong way against porcelain. I walked down the hallway leading to the restrooms, past the bar, the wine cellar display, and a couple whispering intensely in the shadows. The hallway itself was dim, almost atmospheric, and carried the scent of citrus and marble polish. A signature smell, I guessed. Everything about this place was curated. Everything, except what happened next. I was almost at the restroom door when I heard it. "Excuse me." "Sir." A voice, soft but urgent. I turned, expecting maybe a forgotten wallet or someone who mistook me for a valet. But it was one of the waitresses. Young, maybe early 20s. Her name tag read Aisha. She looked nervous, eyes darting toward the dining room before landing back on me. "Yes," I said, trying to be polite, though confusion made it come out flat. She stepped closer, voice low. "I know this is strange, but are you Mr. Rowe?" I hesitated, suddenly aware of the pulse in my ears. "Yes." She glanced around again and then said something I'll never forget. "I just saw your wife put something in your drink." For a full second, I thought I misheard her. "I'm sorry. I saw her drop something into your wine glass. Just a little something. I thought it was a joke, or some kind of anniversary thing. But the way she did it, it wasn't right." She looked around first. Checked to make sure no one was watching. I wasn't going to say anything, but I've seen her here before. A few times. Always with the same man. Not you. I stared at her. The hallway seemed to grow colder. "You're sure?" She nodded, trembling a little. I wouldn't lie about something like this. My mind went blank and then flooded all at once. My stomach turned. 1,000 thoughts came crashing, disbelief, anger, denial, but none of them showed on my face. "Not yet. Thank you," I said carefully. "I appreciate your concern." My voice was steady. I was grateful for that. Years of business meetings had trained me to keep my tone even while fires raged inside. She looked relieved I hadn't dismissed her. "I can get someone." "No. It's okay. I've got it." I turned and walked into the restroom, locked the stall, and stood there gripping the metal walls like I was keeping the world upright. Clarissa, my wife, my partner of 12 years, dropped something in my drink. Something enough to alarm a stranger. Something she didn't want seen. I splashed cold water on my face until my skin stung. Then I looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked composed, but my eyes were beginning to see clearly for the first time in a long while. When I returned to the table, I didn't confront her. I didn't panic. I smiled, sat down. Clarissa turned to me with that practiced grin. Everything okay? Perfect, I replied. And I meant it, because now I had a plan. The hallway smelled like a memory I couldn't place, maybe the polish from an old hotel lobby we once stayed in, or the artificial citrus Clarissa used to spray in the guest bathroom before company arrived. I stood there, just outside the restroom door, trying to gather myself. I didn't know what I'd expected to feel. Anger? Maybe. But it wasn't that. Not entirely. It was disorientation. Like I'd stepped off a curb and missed the ground. Then came the voice. Excuse me, sir. Mr. Rowe. I turned, still locked in my thoughts, and there she was, Aisha, the waitress. Thin, young, dressed in all black with a white apron slightly wrinkled around her waist. Her posture gave her away before her words did, shoulders slightly curled in, as if bracing for disbelief. Yes, I asked, keeping my tone polite, neutral. She looked down the hallway, toward the dining room, then back at me. I know this is strange, but I just saw your wife put something in your drink. My breath caught, and for a split second, I felt like the hallway stretched. My brain stalled between believing her and defending Clarissa out of instinct. But Aisha didn't waver. Her voice quivered, but her eyes didn't. She looked around first, she said, like she was checking if anyone was watching. Then she took something small out of her purse, like a capsule or a pill, and dropped it into your wine when no one was looking. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She took my silence as disbelief, and I saw her shoulders sink just slightly. I wasn't going to say anything, she added quickly. I mean, people do weird things, right? Sometimes it's part of a joke or a surprise, I don't know. But the way she did it, her whole vibe, it was off, cold, focused, like she'd done it before. I still hadn't spoken. I think I was afraid that if I said something, it would confirm this was real, that the warning wasn't just a misunderstanding, that the life I thought I was living had a crack in the foundation I could no longer ignore. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked. Because you looked like you didn't know, she said. Simple as that. And I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if I stayed quiet. That's what did it. That last line. Something about the tremble in her voice and the clarity in her eyes. She wasn't lying. She was scared. Not for herself, but for me. And she had no reason to make any of it up. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. You did the right thing. I didn't see what it was exactly, she added. Just that it dissolved fast. Like powder or something. I could be wrong. You're not, I cut in, gently. I believe you. Her shoulders softened a little. I should get back before someone notices. But if you, I don't know, need anything, I'll handle it, I said again. And then she was gone. I stood alone for a while, staring at nothing. My hand reached for the restroom door again, but I didn't open it. I didn't need the bathroom anymore. I needed a plan. I walked slowly back toward the dining room, heart thudding. The hallway seemed longer now. Or maybe I was walking slower because something in me had changed. Clarissa, my wife, had put something in my drink. At our anniversary dinner. Surrounded by people we both knew, trusted, laughed with. She picked the restaurant. She picked my suit. She picked the wine. She picked the night. But she didn't expect me to find out. As I stepped back into the glow of the chandeliers and conversation, it felt like I was stepping onto a stage. Everyone was still there. Still laughing. Still drinking. My chair sat politely empty, waiting for me like a loyal dog. Clarissa turned and smiled, beautiful and composed, like a woman who had everything under control. She patted the back of my chair. Everything okay? I smiled back. Perfect. I sat down, glancing at the table. 2 wine glasses, mine still full, untouched. Hers, half sipped. I looked at them the way a surgeon studies an X-ray. One of them held a truth she didn't want me to swallow. One of them held my turning point. I nodded along to Jared's joke, laughed even. Then, when no one was looking, I made the switch. Under the table, smooth and practiced, I swapped our glasses. The stem trembled in my hand for just a second, but I steadied it. Clarissa was mid-sentence, too caught up in a story about Venice or Rome or whatever other city she pretended to have fallen in love with on Instagram. She didn't notice a thing. My sister, Marlene, caught my eye across the table. Her brow furrowed just slightly. I gave her a small shrug, like I was just adjusting my glass. The show must go on. And it did. Clarissa smiled at me. I smiled back. I raised the glass that had been hers. To 12 golden years, I said again, this time louder. Toastworthy. She raised what had been my glass. Clink. Cheers. She took a sip. I watched her closely, but casually. Pretended to look at Jared as he launched into another story, but my eyes never really left her. The first few minutes, nothing changed. Clarissa was radiant as ever. Laughing, smiling, speaking fluently, easily. But I was watching for what came next. Because I no longer trusted the surface. I sat back, hands calm on my lap, heartbeat steadying as the seconds ticked. 10 minutes passed. Then her blink slowed. Just barely. Her grip on the stem of the wine glass loosened. Not enough to drop it, but enough that I noticed. Her face twitched in a way that didn't belong. And I knew. It wasn't in my glass anymore. It was in hers. And whatever she meant for me was now working its way through her own veins. The moment I made the switch, time seemed to crawl. It was a simple motion, really. One hand brought my glass toward me, the other slid hers into its place. No grand gesture. No clinking or sloshing. Just a smooth, deliberate act that wouldn't draw attention unless someone was already suspicious. But even then, it would just look like a distracted man correcting the position of his drink. Nothing more. The perfect lie, hidden in plain sight. Everyone at the table was lost in chatter. Jared was still mid-story, something about a business trip to Milan that no one asked about. Clarissa had leaned slightly into his direction, her laugh syrupy and light, her body angled just enough to seem engaged. And yet, she threw me a glance. Just one. A casual flick of the eye, as if to say, "You're watching, aren't you?" That glance alone made my throat tighten. I took the first sip from the glass she intended for me, forcing a natural smile as the wine touched my lips. Rich. Red. No grit. No taste of deceit. Nothing that screamed danger. I swallowed once. Carefully. Then set the glass down and waited. That single sip felt like holding my breath underwater. I didn't know what she had dropped in. Didn't know how quickly it worked. But I knew one thing. Whatever it was, she had meant for it to reach my bloodstream. Clarissa mirrored me. Raised her glass, now mine, and drank from it. A full sip. Confident. Her smile bloomed like a practiced act. To 12 more, she said. May they be even better. To 12 more, I echoed. Marlene watched me closely. I saw it in the way she tilted her head, brows slightly drawn. She always read me too well. But I gave her nothing. Just the smile of a man surrounded by love and laughter, celebrating another year of partnership. I didn't know how much she had heard or guessed. But her eyes narrowed for half a second too long. She would ask questions later, and I'd have answers ready. 10 minutes passed. Clarissa didn't falter. She chatted with Jared. She complimented the wine. She leaned in to whisper something to her cousin Lena that made her giggle. For a moment, I felt like the whole thing had been a hallucination. Maybe Aisha was wrong. Maybe Clarissa dropped a mint or a vitamin or some romantic prank meant to surprise me. My heart started to ease. And then it began. It was subtle. Too subtle for anyone else at the table to notice. But I was watching. Her left eyelid twitched. She blinked twice. Slow. Then again, rapidly. I pretended to wipe my mouth with a napkin, using the gesture to cover how closely I was studying her. Her hand hovered near the wine glass, but didn't lift it again. Her fingers wavered, like the stem was heavier than it should have been. Jared asked her a question. Clarissa smiled, opened her mouth to respond, and stopped. Just for a second. Her jaw clenched. Her throat moved like she was swallowing something thick. I looked away to keep from staring. My heart thudded in my chest like a drumline on parade. The panic I'd been bottling now roared inside me. Not panic from fear, but from confirmation. This was real. This was happening. She had drugged my wine. And now, she was tasting the result. Marlene leaned in, subtle as always. "You good?" she murmured. "Yeah," I replied smoothly. "Just full. Might step out for some air soon." Clarissa let out a low chuckle, the kind that didn't belong in the moment. A beat late. Her head swayed slightly, but she caught herself. Her smile didn't quite recover after that. Her lips parted as if to say something, then closed again. She looked around the table. Her eyes landed on me. And for the first time all night, she truly saw me. Not the version I was presenting. Not the doting husband or the naive fool. She saw me. The man who knew. The man who had switched the glasses. The man who had returned from the restroom changed. Her mouth opened again. "Is it hot in here?" she mumbled, voice thinner than before. Jared turned. "You all right?" Clarissa raised her hand slowly, touched her temple like someone easing a headache into submission. "Just a little dizzy," Maybe the wine's stronger than I thought. No one laughed. Not this time. She tried to stand. Her napkin fluttered from her lap to the floor. Her heel caught the leg of the chair. Her body tilted, but not dramatically. Just enough that her posture no longer looked deliberate. Her weight leaned too far forward, and for a heartbeat, she hovered like a tree too weak to stay rooted. Then she collapsed, slow, surreal, folding back into her seat before sliding to the floor. The room changed instantly. Chairs scraped. Silverware clinked as hands flew to mouths. Someone gasped. Someone else stood and reached for their phone. Clarissa, Jared barked, kneeling beside her. Her eyes fluttered. One arm sprawled against the floor, her other twitching at the elbow. The wine glass tipped off the table, rolling once before spilling red into the ivory cloth like blood into snow. I didn't move at first. Then I stood, slowly, with deliberate calm. "Call an ambulance," I said. My voice was steel. No one moved faster than Aisha. She had appeared from the hallway, already pulling out her phone. Her hands didn't shake. In that chaos, I watched everyone's face. Jared's horror, Marlene's sharp suspicion, Lena's confusion. But Clarissa's, hers was something else. Her gaze locked on mine, pupils dilated, lips parted. There was something there. Not just panic, realization, and fear. Not of the pain, not of the collapse, but of me. Her plan had failed. And now, she knew I knew. Clarissa's fall wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the kind of scene that gets gasps in a movie. It was quiet, controlled at first, like her body was trying to maintain dignity even as it betrayed her. One moment she was sitting upright, the next, she was slumped to the side, slow, graceless, helpless. Her hand had reached out, but not in time. The stem of the wine glass slipped from her fingers and tipped over, spilling Bordeaux like blood across the pristine ivory tablecloth. Jared caught her before she hit the floor completely, but not without a stumble. "Clarissa," he said, voice pitched high with alarm. He shook her shoulder gently. Hey, talk to me." My sister Marlene stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back. "What's happening?" she asked no one and everyone all at once. Clarissa tried to speak. Her lips parted, and her throat moved, but the words never arrived. Her eyes fluttered. Not a blink, just erratic, uncoordinated movement. She looked drugged, or worse. Her right hand twitched near her thigh, then curled in on itself as if retreating from whatever force had taken over. I stayed in my seat a moment longer. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see how everyone else would react. Maybe I wanted to be the last to rush in, just to mark the distance between who I had been before and who I was now. She said she felt hot, I offered calmly. Just before she collapsed. That was technically true. She was fine a minute ago, Jared said, still crouched beside her. His face looked pale under the chandeliers. She was laughing. Toasting. Yes, I said. She was. I stood then. Slowly. Not with urgency, but with control. The table was in full disarray now. Chairs pushed back. Utensils knocked sideways. The red stain on the tablecloth spreading like a shadow. Clarissa groaned faintly. Her head lolled against Jared's arm. Her eyes blinked, unfocused. Then, for a second, they found mine. And held. That look, it froze something inside me. It wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't even surprise. It was closer to comprehension. Like she knew exactly what had gone wrong. Like she knew she'd failed. I crouched beside her, opposite Jared. "Clarissa," I said gently, taking her limp hand. It felt warm and clammy. "Can you hear me?" No response. "Someone call an ambulance," Marlene said, her voice sharp now. "Now. I'm on it." Aisha yelled as she sprinted from the hallway, already on her phone. Good girl, I thought. Clarissa's head turned slightly at Aisha's voice, a flicker of something passing through her glazed expression, fear, maybe, or recognition. Did she realize that Aisha had seen her? That Aisha might have been the thread that unraveled this entire night? I kept holding her hand. Part of me hated her in that moment. Part of me still loved her. But mostly, I just stared at her and waited to see if the poison would speak louder than her lies. The restaurant staff rushed in next. One of the managers knelt beside me and asked a series of questions. Was she diabetic? Allergic to anything? Had she had medication with the wine? I answered what I could. Jared answered the rest. His voice was too frantic, too familiar. I filed that away for later. "She's breathing," someone said. "Pulse is there, but weak." I nodded, lips pressed together. My hand never left hers. I wanted her to feel that. I wanted her to feel me there, watching, knowing, holding her through the very storm she'd planned for me. The ambulance arrived in what must have been 10 minutes but felt like 20. Flashing lights through the tall windows, medics rushing in with quiet efficiency. They rolled her gently onto a stretcher. She groaned again, tried to speak, but her words came out slurred, almost unintelligible. I followed them out the door, one step behind. Not the grieving husband. Not the panicked partner. Just a man walking beside a mystery that had begun to crack open. I could hear the whispers behind me as we passed tables of stunned diners. Some recognized us. Some just stared. I didn't care. At the curb, the medic asked, "Are you riding with her?" I hesitated. "No," I said. "I'll follow behind." He nodded and climbed in. The doors shut. The sirens stayed off, but the lights spun red against the pavement. And just like that, Clarissa was gone, swept away into the night by professionals who had no idea they were treating a woman who had tried to erase her husband over appetizers and wine. I turned and found Aisha standing behind me on the sidewalk, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "Thank you," I said. She looked like she wanted to disappear. I didn't know what else to do. "You did exactly what you were supposed to." Her eyes searched mine. "Are you okay?" I didn't know how to answer that. "I will be." Then I got into my car, sat in the driver's seat, and stared at the steering wheel. My hands were shaking now. Not violently, but enough. Enough to remind me I wasn't invincible. That this night had veered into something too surreal to grasp. The engine purred as I started the car. I pulled out slowly, following the red and blue strobe ahead. Clarissa had made her move. Now it was my turn. Hospitals have their own kind of silence. Not peaceful, not restful, but a silence filled with the hum of fluorescent lights and the constant rhythm of machines keeping track of someone's failing body. I sat in the emergency room lobby, still wearing that wine-stained suit like it was a shell I couldn't step out of. My tie hung crooked. My hands, once steady, were now laced together, knuckles pale. Everything smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Too clean to be comforting. Clarissa was in the back. Unconscious. Stable, they said. The nurse at the desk had assured me 3 times that she was being monitored. Vitals were holding. Whatever she'd ingested hadn't killed her. Yet, I couldn't stop replaying it all in my head. The clink of the glass. The moment her eyes locked onto mine before she fell. The way she hadn't asked me for help, hadn't reached toward me. It wasn't panic. It was recognition. And underneath it, maybe something uglier. Maybe she knew the drink she'd laced had found its way back to her. Marlene had followed me here and now paced the waiting room like a restless shadow. Her heels clicked with purpose on the tile floor. "You haven't said anything," she murmured. "Not really. I'm thinking." "About what?" I didn't look at her. "What happens next?" Aisha had called in a report. The restaurant had handed over security footage. But it was all still noise in my head. I needed something solid. Something that couldn't be twisted. "Do you still believe it was her?" Marlene asked, stopping in front of me. "That she did something to your drink?" "She didn't deny it," I said quietly. "She didn't have the chance." Marlene didn't speak after that. She just sank into the chair next to me. We waited. Eventually, a woman in plain clothes and a badge stepped into the room. Detective Rosario. Late 40s, probably. Sharp eyes. No-nonsense voice. She scanned the room, spotted me, and walked over. "Mr. Rowe." "Yes. Can we speak privately?" Marlene stood. "I'm his sister." Rosario gave her a nod, then looked at me again. "What you share now could factor into an open investigation. You understand?" "I do." She led me down a hallway into a side consultation room. Bare walls, a whiteboard with nothing on it, and 2 plastic chairs that didn't belong in any place claiming to be humane. I sat. "We ran toxicology," she began, flipping open a slim black notebook. "Your wife ingested a moderate dose of something called benzoprex. Know what that is?" "No." "It's not common. It's used in some research trials to paralyze the voluntary muscles temporarily. Doesn't kill. But depending on how it's mixed or consumed, it can cause significant loss of motor control, slurred speech, confusion, collapse." I said nothing. She studied me. "You didn't drink your wine?" "No." "Why?" I inhaled, then let the breath go slow. "A waitress, Aisha," she pulled me aside on the way to the restroom. "Told me she saw Clarissa put something in my glass. Said it looked like powder." That she hesitated. That she'd seen Clarissa there before, with another man. Rosario blinked. "You're saying she tried to poison you?" "I'm saying she didn't expect to be seen." "And you, what?" "Switch the glasses." I nodded. "Yes. You realize how this sounds, right?" I do. There was a pause. Rosario jotted something down. The waitress has given a statement. Restaurant is cooperating. Footage is being reviewed. If there's evidence to back this up, Mr. Rowe, this becomes a criminal matter. I understand. She leaned forward. You're lucky. If you drank that glass. I know. I cut in. I wouldn't be sitting here. She sat back, lips tight. We'll run forensics on the glass and bottle. The lab's already notified. We'll need your official statement, possibly a deposition. You prepared for that? Yes. Rosario nodded slowly, closed her notebook. You've been calm through all this. I met her eyes. Because panic comes later. She stared at me for a second longer, then stood. We'll be in touch. When I stepped back into the waiting room, Marlene rose. Well, they're investigating. It's not a joke anymore. She nodded. What now? I go home. You're not staying? She won't wake up until morning, and even then, what would I say to her? You'd ask her why, Marlene said. But I didn't need to. I already knew. I left the hospital just past midnight. The parking lot was mostly empty, lit by orange street lights that made everything look more fragile than it was. I climbed into the driver's seat, gripped the wheel again, and sat in the dark for a long time. The inside of the car was silent. No music, no talk radio, just my breathing and the soft tick of the cooling engine. What would drive someone to drug their own husband? Hate? Desperation? Greed? Maybe all of it. Maybe more. But I wasn't done yet. I wasn't going to sit back and let this become another mystery people whispered about. I was going to dig until the floorboards of our marriage gave way and showed me exactly what Clarissa had been hiding. The next morning, I would wake up and start searching. And I had a feeling I wouldn't have to look far. The next morning felt foreign, like I'd woken up in a body I hadn't earned. I didn't sleep. I laid on top of the covers, still in the same suit, the smell of wine and hospital antiseptic clinging to me like a second skin. I watched the ceiling slowly shift from black to gray to that pale blue that only comes when the sun rises reluctantly. Clarissa wasn't beside me. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't have to pretend not to feel that. When I finally moved, it wasn't dramatic. No slamming doors, no pacing. I just stood, stripped off the ruined clothes, and showered like I was washing someone else's skin. The hot water helped, but not much. What I needed now wasn't comfort. It was clarity. I dried off, dressed in something plain, and went straight to our shared home office. Clarissa never let me into her side of it. She claimed it was her sanctuary. She also said the same thing about her car, her phone, her half of the closet. I used to think it was a boundary. Now I saw it for what it was: containment. Segregation of truth. She'd carved out entire compartments of her life where I wasn't allowed. Not anymore. The office was too neat. Her drawers too well organized. The kind of sterile perfection only someone hiding something maintains. I started with the obvious, her desk, her locked file cabinet. She never let me have the key, but she also wasn't creative enough to hide it somewhere clever. I found it taped under the bottom drawer. Inside were standard documents, old tax forms, spa invoices, travel itineraries. But behind those, tucked between two charity event flyers, was an envelope labeled Sunset Contingency. That name alone chilled me. Inside were several documents, crisp and cold. The first was a medical release form, one that allowed Clarissa to make decisions on my behalf in the event of incapacitation. The second was a notarized power of attorney. But what froze me was the signature. Mine. Except I never signed it. It was a copy of my handwriting. Close. But the R in my last name curled the wrong way, and the spacing was off. She had forged it. The next paper was a transfer of ownership document for the house. My name replaced with hers on a preliminary deed form. Not yet filed, but ready. My heart pounded as I moved to the tablet she sometimes left in the living room. It was synced to her email she'd never bothered to sign out because she assumed I'd never snoop. I tapped the icon. No password. Her inbox opened like a trapdoor. I searched for Sunset. Only one result. A chain of emails between her and someone named Anika West. At first glance, they looked professional. But the tone was too casual. Too familiar. Clarissa, he thinks this year is about renewal. It's really about conclusion. Anika, the account is almost ready. Once the transfer is in, we'll use the POA. Just need the final trigger. Clarissa, he's getting slower. I'll time it with the anniversary. Keeps the story clean. I stopped breathing. Final trigger? Account transfer? She wasn't planning to leave me. She was planning to remove me. Financially. Legally. Quietly. There was another message, this time to Jared. Clarissa, don't reach out for 72 hours unless it's done. We need distance. You know how this works. Done. Distance. 72 hours. That smug cousin, the one making jokes at dinner, had known. Had helped. I felt the heat rise in my chest, behind my eyes, boiling into rage that I had to keep sealed for now. I clicked on the profile picture beside Anika's name. A professional headshot popped up. Blonde. Mid-40s. Cold smile. Financial consultant. I looked her up on my phone. She had a company registered out of Belize. Offshore financial services, asset protection, wealth migration. The kind of woman you hire when you don't just want to start over, you want to erase someone else to do it. Clarissa had been working with her for months. She had moved money into an account I didn't know existed. She had forged signatures, drawn up contingency documents, coordinated with Jared. And the plan was simple. Poison me just enough to trigger legal guardianship. Claim mental breakdown or illness. File the documents. Transfer the assets. Disappear. Not a divorce. An execution in slow motion. I stood up from the desk and looked around our house. No, my house with new eyes. The kitchen we renovated together. The couch she picked out. The wedding photos still hanging on the wall. A life she curated while riding my exit behind my back. I wasn't broken. I wasn't devastated. I was done. I copied every document. Printed them. Forwarded the emails to myself and backed them up to a secure drive. I called Thomas, my lawyer. Told him to meet me in an hour. He didn't ask questions. Because this wasn't going to be emotional. It was going to be strategic. Just like her. When I left the house that morning, I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. I had everything I needed. The truth. Evidence. And a name Clarissa never thought I'd know. Anika West. 2 days later, Clarissa opened her eyes. I wasn't there. I didn't want to be. I'd already given the police everything, Aisha's statement, the forged documents, the email chains, even a copy of the medical report showing traces of benzoprex in her bloodstream. They had what they needed. Now it was about timing. Thomas called me early that morning. The district attorney's office is ready. They'll file charges by noon. You'll need to make a formal deposition by Friday. Good, I said. And her release? She's conscious now, but still under medical observation. They'll keep her at least one more night. They've assigned an officer to her door. Just one. Thomas chuckled dryly. This isn't TV. She's not a flight risk yet. But she will be. I stared out the window of his office. Downtown buzzed below, busy and blind. The city kept moving while mine had ground to a halt. She'll try to explain it away, I muttered. She always does. Thomas nodded. Let her. You've got more than enough to shut that down. Just stay calm. Calm was a funny word for the storm that had taken root inside me. I wasn't trembling anymore. I wasn't confused. But a cold certainty had taken hold, one that whispered there was no going back. By the time I arrived at the hospital later that afternoon, the detective on duty had already spoken to Clarissa. I stood outside her room for a long moment, watching through the small glass panel in the door. She sat up in bed, for in her arm, hair pulled back. No makeup. No red dress. Just a pale blue gown and eyes that scanned the ceiling like it owed her something. I pushed the door open slowly. She looked up and smiled. That was the first red flag. Hey, she said, voice scratchy but light. They said you might stop by. They? I asked. Your legal team or your co-conspirators? Her smile thinned. You're angry. I get it. I stepped inside, shut the door behind me. No, Clarissa. Angry is what I felt before I found forged documents with my signature on them. Before I learned you planned this for months. She tilted her head, wounded like always. I don't know what you think you saw. You drugged me, I said, flatly. You put benzoprex in my wine. You looked around to make sure no one saw. Unfortunately for you, someone did. She paused. The waitress. I didn't blink. Her name is Aisha. And she saved my life. Clarissa looked away. For a second, I thought I saw the truth crack through her polished mask. But then she shook her head and tried to laugh. Look, I'll admit, things got complicated. Jared and we were just trying to scare you. Shake you up a little. Is that the defense you're going with? I asked, stepping closer. That attempted poisoning was a shake-up? That the forged power of attorney, the offshore account with Anika West, and the emails planning my incapacitation were just an elaborate prank? Her face froze. You saw the emails. All of them. She sank back slightly into the bed, but her voice turned cold. You always underestimated me. I didn't, I replied. I just trusted you. She flinched. I leaned against the windowsill, arms crossed. You were going to put me away. Use the power of attorney to claim I wasn't well. Move the assets. Liquidate everything. And vanish. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I thought we were partners, I said, quieter now. Even when we were drifting. Even when we barely spoke. I never imagined you'd see me as disposable. Clarissa swallowed hard. You don't know what it's like. To feel stuck. You had your work, your name. Everyone respected you. I was just his wife. I wanted more. Then leave, I said sharply. Divorce me. Fight for half. You'd get it. But you wanted it all. Her silence said enough. I didn't come here to yell, I added. I came to tell you. It's over. She looked at me with something like fear now. You're pressing charges. I'm not, I corrected. The state is. Attempted poisoning. Fraud. Criminal conspiracy. You'll be arraigned after you're discharged. Tears welled up in her eyes, probably the first honest reaction I'd seen from her in years. Jared's gone, she whispered. As soon as he heard, he stopped answering. I nodded. Cowards scatter when the light comes on. She looked so small then. So defeated. But I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel revenge. I felt nothing. Which scared me more. I stood, straightened my coat, and headed for the door. Wait, she said. I turned. Do you hate me? She asked, voice fragile. I met her gaze, long and hard. No, I said. But I see you now. And with that, I left. Outside, the detective met me with a clipboard and a quiet nod. She'll be booked upon release. You did well. I just survived, I replied. He shrugged. That's more than most. By the time I got home, the sun was setting in strips of orange and violet. I stood in the kitchen, the quiet almost sacred. The kind of peace you only earn when truth finally speaks louder than illusion. The marriage was dead, but I wasn't. And now the rest of my life could begin. You don't really understand what the word scandal means until your name is printed under it in bold font. Until your inbox floods with subject lines that start with, "Are you okay?" but end with links to gossip blogs. Until people who barely spoke to you at barbecues now forward you screenshots of headlines like CEO poison plot, wife's wine plan backfires. I sat in my apartment, the one I moved into the day after Clarissa's arrest, and stared at the image they used for the article. A photo from our 10th anniversary. I had my hand on her back. She was laughing. We looked in love. People don't realize how betrayal has a face. A snapshot. A date and time. A paper trail. The article didn't get everything right. Some called it an accident. Others spun it as a botched anniversary surprise. One column suggested we were both in on it, trying to stage a viral publicity stunt for a brand I hadn't touched in 2 years. But the truth didn't need their edits. The truth had weight now. Legal weight. Paperwork and poison. Clarissa's name was redacted in some early reports, but by day 3, the dam broke. Her mugshot went public. She still had on the hospital gown, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look far more fragile than I remembered. My inbox was a war zone. Clients. Family. Reporters. College friends who hadn't spoken to me in a decade. I ignored them all. Let the silence do what words couldn't. I didn't post a statement. I didn't defend her or myself. I just logged off. I made one phone call. To Marlene. Still breathing? She asked when she picked up. Barely, I said. You see the news? Everyone has. Even Mom asked if you needed a priest. I chuckled once, short and tired. I don't need a priest. I need time. Well, you've got me. And I'm outside with groceries. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it. There she was, big sunglasses, oversized hoodie, and 3 bags of groceries that she dropped dramatically onto the kitchen counter. Thought you could use food that isn't microwaved, she said, already unpacking. And some silence that doesn't echo. I don't know how to be in this place yet, I admitted, leaning against the counter. It's clean. It's quiet. But it's not home. It will be, she said, placing eggs in the fridge. Eventually. She didn't ask me how I was feeling. Marlene knew that question was useless. Instead, she cooked. Eggs and toast. Orange juice. Silence only broken by the sound of a pan scraping gently against the stovetop. Do you remember, she said as she plated the food, that summer before you married her? When we all went to the lake house. I nodded. She was late. As usual. You waited on the dock for 3 hours. She said her car broke down. She lied, Marlene said, sitting across from me. I found out later she'd gone to a gallery opening with Jared. She just didn't want to deal with the drive. I blinked. Why didn't you tell me? Because you looked so happy when she showed up. I looked down at my plate. You think I'm an idiot. I think you were in love, she said. There's a difference. I ate quietly. She let me. The food was warm, grounding. When she left an hour later, she hugged me longer than she usually did. Keep breathing, she said. I nodded. In the days that followed, I built a rhythm. I walked more. Took phone calls again, just the important ones. I declined every interview. I filed restraining orders against 2 tabloids that showed up outside the building. I found solace in structure. Woke up at the same time each day. Read. Cooked. Slept. Repeat. I also went to every court hearing. Clarissa sat across from me, always dressed perfectly, always with her lawyer close. She never once looked at me directly. She looked past me, through me. Or maybe she couldn't bear to look at what she'd tried to erase and failed. The courtroom was always filled with murmurs. Reporters in the back. Spectators pretending not to stare. I sat straight, silent. I didn't want to fight her anymore. I just wanted the truth to finish its work. At the 3rd hearing, the judge ruled the evidence sufficient for trial. Attempted poisoning. Document fraud. Intent to defraud and manipulate financial assets. No one gasped. No one clapped. But I felt something shift in the air. A kind of closure. Or the beginning of it. Clarissa's attorney tried to spin the story. Said she was overwhelmed. That she feared I was emotionally distant and tried to shake me into seeing her again. No mention of Anika. No mention of Jared. Just theatrics. But I didn't need to respond. The facts stood taller than either of us. After the hearing, I stepped outside the courthouse and into the winter air. Reporters surged. I raised one hand. No comment, I said. But thank you for respecting my space. They didn't respect it, but they wrote it down. That night, back in my apartment, I opened my journal. I hadn't touched it in years. The first entry was dated 2013, the year we got married. I flipped past pages of hopes, frustrations, goals. Then I found the blank one and started writing again. She tried to end me, I wrote. But I'm still here. And I'm finally mine again. It was a Thursday morning when I found the envelope. No return address. No markings. Just my name in delicate handwriting I didn't recognize at first. It had been slid under the door, old school. No text. No email. No signature on a package app. Just paper and quiet intention. I picked it up, heart slowing the way it does when you know something matters before you even open it. I sat on the couch, the apartment still humming with the low sound of traffic outside. It had become my sanctuary, 4 walls of controlled solitude. No Clarissa. No echoes of laughter laced with ulterior motives. Just the sound of me breathing. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, handwritten, each letter carefully formed like the writer had been unsure if they should send it at all. Mr. Rowe, I hope this reaches you in peace. I didn't know if I should write it all, but something kept pushing me to. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's gratitude. Maybe both. I stopped reading for a second. I already knew who it was. Aisha. I've been meaning to say thank you, though that probably sounds backwards, considering I'm the one who spoke up. But you didn't question me. You didn't dismiss me. And in a world where people like me are often told to keep our heads down and stay in our lane, that meant everything. I sat back. The room around me blurred for a second, her words cutting through the weeks of numbness I'd been wading through. I kept reading. I didn't just see her put something in your drink. I saw her. I saw the look on her face when she did it. I knew what it meant. But I've seen things before and said nothing. Fear does that. It teaches you silence. But something in your face when you left the table, it made me speak up. You looked like a good man. And I thought, if someone like you could still be blindsided, maybe we all could. Maybe that's the danger we don't talk about. The ones closest to us holding the sharpest blades. After the news broke, I got a message. Anonymous. A woman. She offered me money to stay quiet. To recant. She didn't say her name. But she used a private encrypted email. I traced it back. I have a friend in IT at the university. He found the source. It was someone named Anika West. I folded the letter once, twice. Let it rest against my knee. So it was true. The net had been wider than I realized. Clarissa hadn't just been planning. She had hired someone to clean up the aftermath. To scrub the trail. Silence witnesses. And Aisha, barely in her 20s, had stood up anyway. I read the rest. I didn't take the money. I saved the message. Attach the logs in case the police need them. I'm studying pre-law now. Crazy, right? After everything. But something about all this made me realize how badly we need people who tell the truth, even when their voice shakes. If you ever need someone who still believes in doing the right thing, someone who still believes in second chances, I'm around. No pressure. Just, thank you for believing me when it counted. Aisha. I didn't cry. But something inside me folded, gently, not in defeat, but in recognition. That's the thing about truth. It rarely makes things easier, but it carves out space for the right kind of people to step into your life. I sat with the letter for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't touched since I'd started my own firm. Julia Tran, head of HR at Roche Strategies. We hadn't spoken in months. I dialed. Julian, she answered on the second ring. Well, this is unexpected. I'm rehiring, I said. Internship. Legal track. I want you to draw up the offer today. Paid. She hesitated. You're coming back? No, I said. Not fully. Just making sure the right people get in. Name. Aisha Malik. There was a pause, and then Julia said, send me the details. I hung up and smiled, the first real one in a while. Later that day, I met Aisha at a campus cafe near the University Law Building. She was wearing a simple navy sweater, hair pulled back into a ponytail, books stacked beside her like armor. Didn't think you'd reach out, she said as I sat down. I owed you that much, I replied. We talked for an hour. About law. About ethics. About betrayal and courage and the terrifying things women are asked to endure when they speak up. I told her about the internship. She blinked, stunned. Why me? You saved my life, I said. She smiled, but shook her head. No. You saved your own. I just pointed to the fire. That stuck with me. Still does. When I walked away from that cafe, the world felt different. Lighter, somehow. Not healed. Not whole. But turning in the right direction. Aisha's letter reminded me of something I had forgotten in all the noise and headlines. People are watching. Even when you think you're invisible. And sometimes, if you're lucky, one of them sees enough of the truth to say something. That night, I framed her letter. Hung it by the door. A reminder that not all strangers are enemies. Some are the reason you survive. Justice doesn't come with fireworks. It comes quietly. One piece of paperwork at a time. Clarissa's sentencing was short, almost clinical. 2 years probation. 5 years barred from managing or controlling any financial assets, not even her own without court approval. No jail time. That part made people talk. She tried to poison him, and she walks free, a woman muttered as we exited the courthouse. But I wasn't there for vengeance. I'd made peace with the fact that her punishment wouldn't match the magnitude of her intent. It never does, not really. The legal system doesn't measure betrayal the way the heart does. I stood in the hallway outside the courtroom for a long time, just breathing. The building buzzed with other lives, other cases, other truths being weighed and bargained. Clarissa walked by with her lawyer, dressed in gray, her expression unreadable. She didn't look at me. I didn't expect her to. We'd passed the point of confrontation. Now we were just two people tethered by the remains of a story neither of us could rewrite. When I left the courthouse, I didn't go back to the apartment. I went to my office. Roche Strategies. It had been running on autopilot for months, thanks to my interim board and Julia's unshakable oversight. But now, with the air cleared, I wanted to walk the halls again, not just as a man who survived, but as a man who had decided to rebuild. The receptionist, new, young, nervous, stood quickly when I walked in. Mr. Rowe. Julian, I corrected. It's just Julian now. She smiled awkwardly and nodded. I walked past her and took the elevator to the 6th floor. My office door was closed. That used to bother me. Now, I was grateful for the boundaries. I stepped inside and stood for a moment, taking it all in. My desk. My books. The old photo of me and Clarissa on the shelf. I reached for it, paused, and turned it face down. Then I sat. And I started writing again. Not code. Not memos. But ideas. I had always wanted the firm to be more than just numbers and strategies. Now I had reason to expand. I launched a fund that week, the Aisha Initiative, a scholarship and mentorship program for young women studying law, especially those who showed courage under pressure. When I called her to tell her, Aisha cried. You didn't have to do that, she said between breaths. I did, I replied, because someone like you shouldn't have to be brave alone. The press latched onto it quickly. From poison to purpose, one headline read. I didn't care for the dramatics, but I appreciated the shift in tone. The story was changing now. Not just a man betrayed, but a man who chose to rise. I spoke at events. Quiet ones. I didn't want to be a symbol, I just wanted to be a voice. I talked about trust, about silence, about how betrayal often wears a familiar face. I told rooms full of strangers that the people you share a bed with can sometimes be the same ones holding the knife. The funny thing is, people didn't flinch when I said it. They nodded. Because deep down, we all know someone like that. I moved out of the apartment 6 months later. Bought a house across the river. Smaller. Simpler. Walls painted in soft earth tones. A kitchen with just enough space for me and maybe, one day, someone else. I didn't hang many photos. I didn't need reminders anymore. Just peace. Clarissa never reached out. Not after sentencing. Not after the article stopped. And Jared? He vanished completely. Rumor had it he left the country. I didn't care. I had let that chapter close. Marlene came over every Sunday. She brought groceries, and I cooked. We never talked about Clarissa. We didn't need to. Our silence was acknowledgement enough. One evening, she lifted her glass of wine and said, "You're different now." "How so?" I asked. "Quieter," she said. "But stronger. Like something broke and healed back smarter." I smiled. "That's what surviving does to you." "No," she corrected. "That's what choosing to live again does." I thought about that long after she left. About the difference between surviving and choosing to live. How easy it would have been to crawl into bitterness and build a home there. But I hadn't. I'd risen. Quietly. Deliberately. Without noise, but with purpose. And that, I decided, was my victory. People ask me now if I still believe in love. I do. But I believe in self-trust more. I believe in reading the silences between people. In watching the small things. How someone closes a door. How they react when you're not looking. I believe in questions that don't have easy answers, and in the strength to walk away when they're not answered at all. Most of all, I believe in listening. Because the night that was meant to end me started with a toast and a lie, but I survived it not with rage, not with revenge. I survived because I listened. Because I paid attention. And sometimes, that's all it takes to rewrite the ending.